We're taking a look at Wednesday, November 13th, in our regular class. We're going to take a look at the story called Hey You Down There. But first, I want to go through and run through voices. From yesterday, we can go through and help you out with that.
I'll be right here.
We'll do this one more time, real quick, to try and help you out. The goal is to try and get you guys a chance to stand up. We shouldn't have to go all the way to the edge or need to at the rate of burning 2 points. And so, I don't think you'll need to look at it. All right. So going, if you don't know it, just quietly do it in your head. If you do know it, then come along with me.
Characters, who's in the story, setting, when and where, plot, what happens, point of view, how we see the story, theme, what we learn, internal conflict, major decision, external conflict, something versus something.
Fighting works.
She's joking.
Alright. With the voices, we talked about foreshadowing in the story. We're going to come back and take a look at that here in just a moment, because that's how it helps us figure out what happens in the story. Because the story just ended. And it ends with the nurse talking to him. Let's back up. It ends with him, where is he at the very end of the story?
Hospital.
And that's where he's talking to the nurse, and we find out information. Well, one thing she mentions is defibrillators. And as you guys said yesterday, they're the, when do you have to use defibrillators?
When you're like,
Jordan.
When like someone's heart is like about to fail.
Nicely done. And it shoots electricity through you, and it helps start your heart. And you rub them together, and it shoots electricity through you and stuff like that. Now, also, the nurse gives him other information too. And what other information does the nurse give him aside from the defibrillators? Free H?
She was like getting into like your parents and then kind of stopped.
Nicely done. She was talking about the fact that something happened to his parents. Now we can guess what happened to his parents because she mentions something aside from parents. What else does she mention aside from, like, your parents almost gave you a high five? Not quite. She's on the way to saying, freebie?
Said that they went flying through the windshield.
Nicely done. That they went flying through the windshield, and she mentions one other thing that happened because he mentions his dream. Maya?
That his dream was real and it wasn't just a dream.
And what was his dream about?
About a car accident?
Nicely done. That his dream was about a car accident. And so then we can go back to the story and start trying to figure out what some of those clues were. Jose?
When like the voices inside of his head, or like the nurse, or like the.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to take a look at. So now, Richard, with the foreshadowing clues that popped up through the story. When Sam sees white lights, when he was sitting in his science class, if we look back at it now, we should have some idea, know what was back up before that. Sorry, not the white lights, even further back, the dream. What was his dream?
Car.
Now we know it wasn't a dream, because what happened to his family?
He died.
In a... Now, if you remember when he's describing the dream and going through there, he's like, it felt like it was a very real dream. He talked about the idea that it was the scariest. He mentions being able to smell the barbecue and stuff like that. Now that we know what happened to his family, it makes it that much more creepy when you realize why he was smelling burning meat and stuff like that. It's that extra. So that's why he talks about why it was. And remember, he wakes up screaming, and the reason he wakes up screaming is probably because that was when he got knocked out. Then that's when the voices first started talking to him. The white light. So for that one, Tarby, what's the white light?
Well, like what actually happened? Or,
Why is he seeing a white light?
with the doctor's face and
Nicely done. And they're checking, when they check to see if you're still alive, and they're using like a little flashlight. Because he says not only did, did the white light stay in one eye?
No.
It went back and forth. And then also, what else did he have aside from just the white light? Did he feel? Free H. That was much later. But with the white, that was much later. With the white light, he said he felt something. 3 names?
The pressure on his eye.
Pressure on his eyes. And that was from the idea of them like pulling open his eyelid, looking at it. And that's why he's seeing the white light, like, he can feel like this pressure. So like pulling open his eyes, is it was like being translated into his dreamlike coma state, if you will. So it's the paramedics checking eyes with the flashlight. When he has blood on his arm. How about that one? Yeah?
They were testing his blood, and they're also putting the IV.
Nicely done. When they're testing his blood in the IV. Look back at that section to what the voices say to him and explain to me why the voices are saying what they do. Because if he has an IV in his arm and what he's doing in this dream state versus what the voices are saying, the voices connect to what is trying to come across. Jordan?
Stop fighting it.
Nicely done. Why are the voices saying stop fighting it? How does that connect, Jordan?
Because he's like nervous or something like in his like conscious mind sort of.
And what's he trying to do in the dream?
Escape or something.
Well, what's he trying? Well, his arm's bleeding in the middle of the cafeteria. So what's he trying to do to that blood?
Stop it.
Nicely done. So I'm sure if he's in his dream trying to do it, in real life, like, the doctor's like, "What? Stop fighting! What are you doing?" And he's like slapping it away. So that's why you hear them yelling like, "To stop fighting it." And then was there something else they said right after that?
Oh yeah, we're losing him.
Nicely done. It was the losing him. Any idea what that's talking about? They say losing him, falling. Dompert?
Oh, like they're losing him, like he's going to die.
Nicely done. The idea of him, he's going to be dying, and the fact that we're losing him. Falling is from, yeah?
Well, you know, like one of those machines, it will go up on the heartbeat.
Nicely
Well,
done.
his heartbeat's getting smaller and smaller. So
The
it's
blood
falling.
pressure thing. So the idea of the blood pressure, that means when the heart started the stopping the beating, that the blood pressure's falling. He's just not getting all of it. All he hears is falling. And then, of course, if they're saying losing him, the blood pressure's falling. If you're a paramedic, what do you need to do?
Shock him.
Nicely done. Scene jumps. Now we jump to our next scene. His chest explodes. Why would his chest be exploding from there? Watson? Nicely done. That's where the shock paddle. So now you see where his dream jumped, but in real life it's that same thing. The chest exploding, it was the doctors who were using the shock paddles to try and save him, and that's why all of a sudden, and of course if you go back to that same section, the things that they're yelling out loud to him, they yell first, "Not gonna make it," because what are they worried about?
He's not gonna make it.
The fact that he's getting ready to die, and then that's when the next thing they yell is shock him, and that's when he was like, "I'm shocked, I'm shocked." They're yelling that we're getting ready to shock him, and of course, what do you have to yell before you do the shocking?
Clear.
And that's when they yell clear, and he's like, "What are you talking about?" And then
There's
right
no
after they yell
response.
clear, you have the like, and then the shock goes through him, and that's when they yell then no response, which means
No, nothing.
nice done. His heart has not responded to it, so what do they have to do again?
Clear.
Nicely done. And that's where he's going through it. He's like, "What do you mean no response?" And so that's where so he hears it as it's sort of going into his dreamlike state. When the voices say they're all dead, who would they be referring to? Mickey?
His family.
Nicely done. Assuming referring to the fact of his family. And that would be back by like the paramedics, the police, when they first show up. And that's when he keeps hearing it as he keeps entering into the little dream world thing. We did the voices say stop fighting it. You got that one. And then the family. Split up the family about the dying in the car wreck. So you go back and using all of those little clues throughout the story. Ooh, on the back side, at the very bottom, the second to last paragraph, is a source of irony. Why is it a source of irony? When this is right after he's been shocked and he's laying there and is shocked the second time and he goes, "I'm dying. So this is what it's like. But why? Why'd they have to kill me? What did I do to them?" That's ironic. Why is that ironic? Andrew?
They're actually trying to save his life.
Nicely done. So to him fading out is actually him going from being almost dead to coming back to life, but because it's the dream world dying, he thinks it's death. So it's ironic that what he thought was death was actually him coming back to life. Is there anything else I wanted to hit in there? All right.
Shock me.
Oh, one more thing they point out. Front side, third column, like 4 things down. When it says, "God," he thought, "this is beginning to feel like a really bad dream." Why was that? Free H?
Because
over
he's
here?
in a dream.
Nice one, because it is a really bad dream.
Why did it
You ever been in a dream where it jumps from one scene to the next? Like all of a sudden you're
Yeah.
walking down the street and like turn around, you're in a zoo and you're like, now you got same thing. He's all of a sudden he wakes, he's in a dream. Where in the story it just feels like you're jumping from one to the next. Here he goes from the dream to all of a sudden he's in his classroom to in lunch. So it feels like it's supposed to be jumping throughout the story, but that dream world's going from one thing to the next. Dompert?
Why does it keep, what about over there? The voices say over there.
I'm guessing because what happened to his family, they went through the windshield. They're trying to find him. Where are they? Over there. So they're trying to find from the car wreck and what's going on and stuff like that.
This is violent.
Jose?
I have like one time I had like a vision in my dream, and then it happened like earlier on in the day.
It's crazy.
I know, I hate
3 names.
So basically his parents, like when the car crash happened, went through the windshield, then they burned to death.
That's why they smell barbecue.
That's weird.
Yeah.
They're like, let's go.
I like car.
Yeah.
And then the fire beginning of it, a loud scream woke Sam from his sleep. That must have been right as he hit the
There you
window.
go. The fact that it would be ironic because he was actually going into a sleep as opposed to waking up from it. Yeah.
So like whatever happens to the real world happens to him like in the dream world.
Yeah, sort of right. Like, you ever had your alarm clock go off, and instead of waking up, you work it into your dream, and you're like, the bomb's gonna go off, I can't stop the bomb! You're all yelling into your dream, like, I don't know how to... alarm clock. And so it's that same thing, except being unconscious in a coma, he can't wake up from it, so all these things keep trickling into his little dream world. Yes?
I can make a connection to that. My
Yeah.
friend's mom, she had a dream that her husband died, and the next day he died.
That's
That's
unfortunate dream to have. Hopefully it wasn't her stabbing him, because that's
It was
not
like
really
in
planning things
Christian
out.
read it.
From there, we're going to have to jump through
It's
and go through our
safety.
7 elements real quick. So to help you guys out, characters. We had 1, 2,
Who's in
like
the
3
story?
characters. Let's say maybe 3 characters. At least 1 major one, and then 2 major, and maybe a half character. We'll see.
Who's in
Forbes?
the Sam.
Definitely Sam.
Sammy.
Sam. And then 2 other ones, kind of. I usually try to aim for at least 3.
His friend?
Mickey. And who else would you put in there?
The teacher.
There's one other one that we know actually exists and talks to him.
Oh, the nurse.
Nice, hold on. I'd say Trevor and then the nurse would be the 3 that we had. Because we know Sam's there, we know the nurse is there, then Trevor, even though it's in his dream, I still count it. So you have Sam, the boy who hears voices, Trevor, Sam's friend, and then the nurse. Sam realizes she was the voice. Setting for where it takes place, for the most part, throughout the whole thing. Andrew?
In school.
Yeah, works for me. And and at the very Sam's house at the very beginning, and then school, and then at the very end.
Hospital.
At the hospital. And then when does it take place?
In the morning, in his
Well,
house.
5 o'clock.
Morning in his house, evening
All
at
that works
school.
for me.
and-
What'd you get?
Current time, I put
It
night
says
and
in the
day.
beginning,
It never works
5
for
o'clock in the morning.
5 o'clock in the morning.
For the plot, as we go through,
What happened?
starts off with what's the first that we find out in the story?
Sam has bad dream.
Sam, and what's the bad dream about?
Dying. Family died.
Works for me. Sam has a dream about car wreck and hears voices. Then it jumps to what?
School.
With
White.
light.
White.
There you go.
and stuff.
in science he hears voices and sees a white light. Then
He goes to
During lunch, he sees blood on his arm.
nice look.
And then
At lunch he hears voices and his arm bleeds. And then
shop.
In
Math
science,
class.
he's
not science,
Math.
Math.
He's
the second scariest class.
Yeah.
There you go. In math he hears voices and gets
And
shocked.
then the nurse
I thought
tells
those
him
are two
And the final one is
Nurse finds out he's in the
tells
hospital.
there you go. Wakes up in hospital, realizes who the voices were.
yeah.
Point of view. Should
How
be
we
simple,
see the
I
story.
think. Ish. We'll see.
Third person on
Okay,
mission.
alright.
Third person on mission.
So what if it's third
But he was
definitely third person. For it's omniscient.
limited.
Limited.
Well, I'm saying if it's omniscient, you have to find a scene without Sam. Is there a scene without Sam?
No.
So then it has to be.
Limited.
So if you have a scene, because even though he talks to other people, they're always talking to him. So because they're always talking to him, it becomes limited because it's going to be limited to just him, following Sam. For the theme, this one's tough. I just put don't give up because he's trying, dying in the hole. He's trying to not give in to voices. This doesn't have a real strong
Don't
theme.
dream.
Don't dream. That's probably not the best theme. Sure, I wish you the best of luck with that one. Internal conflict. That one we can do.
Major decision.
Major decision. Give me a character and a decision they have to make. Mickey?
Wake up.
Trevor, he has to decide, like, I mean, not Trevor, Sam. But,
Sam?
he has to decide to, like,
Die or
if he wants to live or, like, just give up.
Works for me. Live or give up. Yeah?
Well, He can go insane, or he can choose to accept it.
That's very true too. The hearing the voices, he can choose to start going blah, 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 in the middle of class or try to accept and
And
fight
then die.
against it. Domper,
Either live or die.
works for me. I could accept going crazy or fight against the voices. How about Trevor? He also has to make a choice in the story. What choice does he have to make? Free age?
Think that his friend's crazy or just help him go through it.
Works for me. Help his crazy friend or avoid him like a three-legged mutant mouse. External conflict. What
Something versus
fight or
something.
battle do we have in the story? MacLean? How do we say external conflict?
Oh,
Verse.
versus death.
Alright, and how did... and why is that important to the story?
Because he either has to like believe that they're really there or just ignore it.
Nicely done. And you should have at least one other battle, as you say, versus the voices. Forbes?
Sam versus death,
How so?
because like he's fighting to stay alive.
Not bad. I'm important. I put Sam versus his own mind, but I'd say the same idea. The whole idea of him in the process of dying and going crazy and stuff like that. Nicely done. Now, let's take the next look at another story about death.
Death.
Another story about this?
Hey, you down there.
That's offensive.
Who saw the death wheels?
No.
Let's read it.
Who start with the title? Who start with the title?
They have
Sounds kind of good.
titles on both sides.
Alright.
This side.
We'll try to get through this one as quickly as possible through today and tomorrow. This will be the one thing, but we'll have to read just a little beginning part going on here. Forbes? With you see it, the one that says, hey you down there, that says like twice at the top left. The other one's the back side where it says Glar the Master. We're not ready for Glar the Master yet. That comes in later. It's going to introduce a guy named Calvin. I'm curious to see what kind of person you think Calvin is. And then figure out how Calvin treats his wife. Yes, dear.
What?
Can I read?
Tomorrow you can't. Today I'm going to go ahead and read just so we can try and get through as much as possible. Then tomorrow I have no problem with you guys reading. Alright. With Hey You Down There. Calvin Spender drained his coffee cup and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. He burped loudly, then proceeded to fill a corncob pipe with coarsely shredded tobacco. He scratched a match across the top of the table and, holding it to his pipe, sucked noisily until billows of acrid smoke poured from his mouth. Dora Spender sat across the table from her husband, her breakfast scarcely touched. She coughed lightly, and then, as no frown appeared on Calvin's brow, she said, "Are you going to dig in the well this morning, Calvin?" Calvin fixed his small red-rimmed eyes upon her, as if she had not spoken, and said, "Get going to the chores right away. You're going to be hauling up dirt." "Yes, Calvin," Dora whispered. Calvin cleared his throat, and the action caused his Adam's apple to move rapidly under the loose red skin on his neck. He rose from the table and went out the kitchen door, kicking viciously at the tawny cat which had been lying on the doorstep. Dora gazed at him and wondered for the 1,000th time what it was that Calvin reminded her of. It was not some other person. It was something else. Sometimes it seemed as though the answer was about to spring to her mind, as just now when Calvin had cleared his throat. But always it stopped just short of her consciousness. It was disturbing to know with such certainty that Calvin looked like something other than himself, and yet not know what that something was. Someday, then, Dora knew, the answer would come to her. She rose hurriedly from the table and set about her chores. And that last part is going to play a big role in the story coming up, too. But we have two main characters. Who are two main characters so far? Aaron?
Calvin.
And?
Dora.
Nice one. Calvin and Dora. What kind of person, or how do you think of Calvin as a person so far with our introduction that we have? Freebie?
A jerk.
Why a jerk?
Because he like yelled at his wife. Like doing chores.
Works for me. The fact that he yelled at his wife. Did he do anything else jerky besides yell at the wife? Forbes?
It was like smoking.
And he was smoking and she was trying to like politely cough at him and he just like, whatever. Sophia?
He treats her like a maid.
Nice one, treats her. So definitely is not coming across as a nice guy, treats her like a maid, stuff like that. And then he said when he cleared his throat, his Adam's apple, you know where your Adam's apple is? Yeah. Right there. It says he has a bunch of like red flabby skin hanging down there. So when he cleared his throat, like flapping back and forth. It's like It made her think of, he's like, he makes me think of something, not someone, but something. She's trying to think.
Turkey.
Actually, that's
Oh,
what she's
Thanksgiving.
trying to think of is that whole turkey thing, like, oh, like flobbles back and forth. So,
I just want to spray paint.
keeping that in mind as we go forward. Halfway, and he's getting ready to go out and do work. What work does he have to do today?
Digging something.
Digging something. What was the something he has to
The
dig?
well.
The well.
So there's the turkey. Some of you were saying it looks like a turkey. A little flobbly thing. I don't believe we call it thing. And then digging a well, so they used to use for when you had water, and you didn't have it from the city, you have to dig down far enough to get water, and you have like just a round hole, and you bring it up in buckets. So that's what we're talking about, him going out and digging.
Is that a person in there?
Yep, that's a person.
Halfway between the house and the barn, a donut-shaped mound of earth surrounded a hole. Calvin went to the edge of the hole and stared down into it distastefully. Only necessity could have forced him to tackle this task, but it was either this digging or the hauling of barrels and barrels of water each day from Nord Fisher's farm half a mile down the road. Calvin's herd of scrub cattle was small, but the amount of water it drank was astonishing. For 2 weeks now, ever since his well had gone dry, Calvin had been hauling water, and the disagreeable chore was becoming more unpleasant because of neighbor Nora's hints that some kind of payment for the water would only be fair. One of the drawbacks to having a well is that sometimes you take all the water out of it and it would go dry, meaning that you'd have no more water. You have to go to a different spot on your property, dig down again, start a whole new one. So while he's waiting to get the well dug, what does he have to do? From a neighbor. So he has to go all the way down to a neighbor, get his well, crank out all these big barrels of water, lug it all the way back. He's like, that's a pain in the patootie. So that's the only reason he's digging this hole, is because the other option is a big pain. And what does Nord want from him?
Money.
Yeah, Nord's like, you should probably be paying me. He's like, I'll dig my own well, thanks. Several feet back from the edge of the hole, Calvin had driven a heavy iron stake into the ground. And to this was attached a crude rope ladder. The rope ladder had become necessary when the hole had reached a depth well beyond the length of any wooden ladder Calvin owned. Calvin hoped desperately that he would not have to go much further. He estimated that he was now down 50 or 60 feet, a common depth for many wells in the area. His greatest fear was that he would hit a layer of rock which would call for the services of a well drilling outfit. Both his funds and his credit rating were far too low for such a team. When he says 50 or 60 feet, that's about 5 or 6 stories down. So if you can imagine a 6-story building, that's how far down he's dug up to this point. We're going to stop there. Give you guys a chance to get points here in a moment. We had anyone? 2 people have already gone. Mickey and Mays have already gone to get points. Another volunteer to go through and get points. Forbes it is. All right, Forbes. I'll hook you up with the hand signs as you go through. Ready?
Characters, who's in the story, settings, when and where, plot, what happens in the story, point of view, how we see the story, theme, what we learn, internal conflict, major decision, external conflict, something versus
Nicely done, Forbes. Got you 5 points. You're up to 80. And dude, Jordan it is. Ready?
Characters, who's in the story, setting, when and where, plot, what happens, point of view, how we see the story, theme, what we learn,